Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Hello, I'm Krista, and we are the Sixth Sense Society. Welcome to another cosmic weather forecast, this time for the month of June. And we are happy to introduce our new co-host for the cosmic weather, Olivier. Welcome, Olivier.
Welcome to me.
Yes. And we'd like to know just a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Olivier. You're going to find out, obviously, that I'm not from America. And I don't think you're going to need subtitles because pretty much everybody understands what I'm saying all the time, if I speak. So I was born in France and I was raised there, and I've been doing a lot of artistical stuff like fashion, cooking, design. I graduated from a school in France, from art school and fashion school. So I've been pretty much an artist all my life. I've been doing music and cooking. I love cooking. So for me, it's all one thing. It's like all about developing all the senses and to raise my vibration. And through those things, I've been developing my sixth sense, which is very interesting. Why I'm here now, because that's the name of the show.
Yes.
And I think it's really serendipity, like you told me 2 weeks ago.
Yes, I've known Olivier for many years now, almost, I don't know, 18 years.
We went to school together.
He's a wonderful person. We're really happy to have him. So let's get going on what's happening in the cosmos. And this month, I will say briefly, there's going to be wind and rain, sort of. And you'll see why, So first of all, I like to go over the moons. And this is, basically, so if you practice magic, if you're just a lunar worshiper, you can kind of tune in to this part and then find out what's going on with the moons. And so Monday on June 3rd, we have our new moon in 12 degrees and 34 minutes of Gemini at 3:02 a.m. And by the way, it will conjunct the sun that day. Sunday, we have our first quarter moon, and that's Sunday the 9th, and it's at 19 degrees and 6 minutes of Virgo at 10:59 p.m. And then Monday the 17th is our full moon, 25 degrees 53 minutes of Sagittarius at 1:31 a.m. But it's a tricky moon. It goes void of course until 9:13 a.m. when it moves into Capricorn. So don't do any magic then. Do it before or after. But it's kind of cool. It's in two signs. And that one will oppose the sun. And finally, we have on the 25th our last quarter moon. And that's going to be 3 degrees of Aries in 34 minutes at 2:46 a.m. So let's talk a little about the moons. I know I have something to share, but let's start with you, Olivia. I know you were thinking about the moons and wanted to share about that.
Yeah, I pretty much look at the moon like a farmer would do, which means it's in the sky. So when it's not in the sky, so you plant seeds like I think of the new moon, and that's what it says for this new moon in Gemini. Gemini is a very busy and active sign. It's restless, so I think we are supposed to plant lots of seed this time for the new moon because it's in Gemini, and it's promising to be light and outgoing. And what I want to say about the moon, so what I like about this is like it. I was telling you like before that when I did my research yesterday, I realized something that I've never noticed before, and I don't know why because it's there. And the moon is like the heartbeat of the year. It grows, it fades, and it disappears, and it's like a phase in your throughout the year that allows you to plant seeds, as I just said already, and to work on projects on yourself. And it goes through all the signs all throughout the year, which is like putting on a different outfit every time. And it's really interesting because I think you can really work on yourself. You don't have to. It's a tool, kind of. But I think that's really interesting. And I noticed this yesterday, and it reminds me of the Gregorian chant. One time I was at the ocean, and I look at the ocean with the ebb and the flow, and this is how the chants are constructed. And the thing with the moon is the same. It's the ruler of Cancer, which you are, and it's water. So it's the ebb and the flow which allows you to how can I say, to work on your emotions. And the new moon in Gemini is going to be working on your emotion, but Gemini is in an air sign, which is very mental. So you're going to have to think your emotion and decide for what you want to do with your love life, I would say, maybe.
I think that's really wonderful.
Yeah.
I love the idea how you're looking at the moon through the year. I happen to have moon in Gemini, and one of the recommendations I got from Steve Forrest from my chart, when I had a chart done when I was a teenager with him, he always told me that the talking cure and the writing in a journal would always help me sort my feelings out. And so I started a journal, and especially when I was younger and so emotional, journaling about it. First of all, you can turn that into some art.
Yeah.
And also, we don't burden everybody with everything going on, and especially with Moon in Gemini, which likes to chat, you know.
And that's what's interesting, because emotion is motion, electric motion. So if you're thinking your emotion, the fact that you're writing them down on a piece of paper, or you create a painting with this, it's what you're supposed to do, and put them out there in a 3D. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And also I'm just going to kind of mention, not really talk about it, but the new moon falls on the United States chart. Ooh. Those of you that want to follow this chart with me whenever I talk about it, just go to astro.com. They have great free charts. Giving them a shout out because they're an amazing source, and they also have great astrologers there that you can book readings with that are really reasonable too. So it's going to it's falling on the descendant of the United States chart, and on the descendant of the chart, which is Gemini, there's also Uranus. So that's going to be an interesting time, I think, for sort of unusual things to happen, and maybe to plant some original ideas that will blossom later on in the year. So I just noticed that. I was like, well, that's kind of cool,
Yeah, and what's interesting with this new moon, it's by the end of this year, it's going to be a full moon in Gemini again.
So by the end of the year.
Yes, which gives you 6 months to develop those projects, those seeds you've been planting. And I think that's really a strong one. We had like a few months ago, we had a new moon in Libra and a full moon in Libra.
Yes, I remember that.
The one in between was something in Taurus, I think. No. Yes, it was. And it was like, there was something like constraining, you say. And this one is there's like a bit of a freedom, because Gemini are very outgoing people, and this is something that should free you in a way, I think. And working on something for 6 months it's really important for everybody, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to mention too that we often talk about magic with the new and full moons, but I wanted to mention briefly a couple ideas for quarter moon magic. And the first quarter moon, evidently, which I talked about already, which is going to be in Virgo, it's evidently good for process of building things up. So you've already planted the seed, so you can work on building up it more. And it can be a seed that you planted, months before as well. It's a great time to work with the triple goddess, and especially work for courage, elemental magic, friends, luck, and motivation, which is something I think I could use sometimes. And then first quarter moon magic is evidently good to work at sunset. And then the fourth quarter, just like you would think, it's about releasing negativity, doing banishing work. You can also do sort of a series of banishing work over months, so you can continue some banishing work. And I also found it interesting that one source said it's particularly good for healing tumors and cancers. Ooh. So fourth quarter moon, if you're having friends or yourself dealing with cancer or tumors, this is a good time to aid and support your healing process by doing something along with whatever your treatment is, of course.
And get some help.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to mention that in passing, because I think that one of the things that I like about the moon, like you were saying, Olivier, is that it's the first, I guess, thing you can follow in your chart really easily because it moves so quickly. I've seen a recommendation where you can just watch what sign the moon is and see how you feel that day. So when I did that, I noticed, because I'm a Cancer and my husband's Capricorn, when the moon was in Aries, I used to pick a fight with him.
Yeah.
And once I knew that, consciously, I just used that tension more deliberately, because that's what, that's really what a square is. So, Aries squares both Capricorn and Cancer, in case you don't know that, which is a 90 degrees angle. And so it puts tension on things, but it's very creative, So once you bring consciousness, which is one reason I want to do this little section, is to bring consciousness to the cosmos, and you work with it the way you like to work with it, whether it's magic, whether it's I'm really into looking at the chart, but that we're all cosmic beings, and this is a great way to expand our consciousness, and it's a lot of fun, actually, you know.
And what's important is, like I was telling you, for me it's like being a farmer. Like you see the moon in the sky, and it gets bigger, and after it disappears. So once you have you work with this, but on the top of it, when you have those information where they are, because they're not always in the same sign.
Yes.
And so that's what allows you to work on yourself, and I think that's important. And I've always been fascinated by the moon, especially when it changes color all the time. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think culturally we are very fascinated because everyone likes to go out and take pictures every time there's an eclipse. Yeah. There's millions of pictures, and you'd think we'd be bored with it, but we're not. We love to go out and look at it, and there's something about it because you can see it, it's so visible, and you can feel the effects, and you have, of course, the tidal effect of the moon. But let's go on to some of the other planetary things going on too.
I want to say something about those eclipses and the full moon and moon. In the past, in the far away past, people used to be afraid of everything, and astrology should not be a tool or something that you're scared of. It just helps you see what's going on with you, with the world around you, and there's nothing is going to happen to anybody. It's just the way it is. It's something that helps you. You don't have to look at it. You don't have to pay attention to it, but you can you can respond to it by being positive and use it to the best you can for yourself. I think that's what it should be, and that's what I do with the full moon. I'm always like, it's like amazing. It's beautiful. It works every day. It works. It's like the sun being there every day. It works, and it's here, so we should use it.
Yes. And I agree that it's nothing to be afraid of, too. I think sometimes people try to make people afraid of it.
Yeah, like the turn of the century, like everybody was scared, and because somebody wrote some books and things like this, it's somebody's opinion.
Exactly. There's a lot of opinion. So the reason I said earlier that it's rain and wind for this month is because there is quite a bit going on in the sign of Cancer, or a water sign this month. And we still have, of course, the sun in Gemini. We have Venus going into Gemini 2 on the 8th at 6:37 p.m. In the Cancer, I wanted to talk a little bit about that because it's important to the United States chart. And we have Mercury on the 4th going into the sign of Cancer at 1:05 p.m. And we also have, the sun going in at the summer solstice on the 21st at 8:54 a.m. And we already have Mars in Cancer. The Cancer, I didn't bring that up. I started with the United States chart. When I started, I was really impressed because of the Pluto and the Pluto return, which I talked about coming up in a couple years. But we are very much a Cancerian nation. We have Venus, Jupiter, Sun, Mercury, and part of Fortune all in the sign of Cancer, with the Venus, Jupiter, and Sun are in the 7th house, which is the house of Libra and relationship. So, and Jupiter in the sign of Cancer is exalted, so it likes to be in that sign. So in a lot of ways, you would think, looking initially at the country, there are some things you can say, like, for instance, the whole family values thing, and that comes out. And even though it's twisted, if it wasn't twisted, the concept of family and the family of mankind could be something the United States consciousness could grow into, so that we, especially being in the 7th house, which is really, I would say, the house that would represent our connection to the other countries, that our expansion into other countries should not be military, but it should be based on Jupiterian values of education, philosophy, learning from other cultures, generosity, really helping. And we have also Venus there. So this is kind of the ideal to me. And of course, there are some aspects which I'm not going to go into this time to the sun, but I was kind of in a way depressed because the United States has some very good things in its chart that I feel we're not really totally living up to.
No, yeah. And what I want to say about America, it's a baby country, and it's over 200 years old, and it's all about finding that its true self. I think it's about, and when you come to America, you always feel really welcome. It's like, as you say, family. The Cancer is family, has family values, and it's very friendly, and that's what you feel when you come to America. And that's not the same in all countries. I think it's very different. It's very specific to America. And,
and then let's talk a little bit about what the sign of Cancer really means, also both positively and negatively. So of course it is the archetype of the mother, and negatively, since I'm a Cancer, I can vouch for some of this. Cancer can be very overprotective, and it can also kind of bury inside its shell. And probably one of the most difficult, challenging things for all Cancerians is dealing with fear and different levels of fear and anxiety. So this you can see in the United States sometimes, where we're fearful, and that the fear spreads of anything outside of our clan, what's not familiar. That's the low end of the Cancerian, and having then to eventually leave your shell and get a bigger shell. That's what the crabs do. They sort of shed their shell when it gets too small. And then you have to be able to say, what, I got to go out. I'm vulnerable. Now I'm going to get a big shell. But then there's that archetype of the great mother, which again is a very idealistic and interesting archetype, where protecting all of its children, including the earth, so we have that, dichotomy, I guess you could say.
It's selfless in a way.
Yes. And there definitely are some groups that you'll see, that will go out into other countries that do the real missionary work, that really help. And they go there with really good intentions to really help other cultures, not to, become a presence and dominate them and control them. So we do have some of that, examples of that with some of the charities that are really, really good.
Yeah, it's true. And what I've noticed about Cancers, they've been very important in my life. They always come at a point where I need guidance, or they take me somewhere else, like you're doing now. It's really important for me why I'm here at this place on this show is really important. I don't know where it's going. It must be something special, because you're a Cancer, and all throughout my life I had Cancers, and they put me in one place, and it was the fashion school in America. It's all Cancers. And it's funny because I was asking myself, what happened to those Cancers? Am I supposed to be falling asleep or something? And no, and there you are, and we know each other. So we said, you were sleeping, and you forgot to tell me where I should go. And now we are here.
That's right.
But there's something I want to say about Cancers, which I've noticed. I don't want to be rude or something to you, because you're
don't
Cancer.
worry, no.
The crab walks sideways, which means it's never really direct, but it's always going around you, and it's going to want something. It's not going to really tell you directly, but you can feel the emotion behind it. And that's what I sense when I'm with a Cancer. I know what they want, but I know they're not going to tell you really directly, because that's the way they act, I think. I don't know what you think about this.
No, that's true. I would say I have other aspects in my chart, but I did still need to learn to speak directly and work on also being able to express my deepest feelings,
That's what I'm saying, exactly.
So that was something, but again, I was really fortunate to get a really good astrology reading when I was only in my 20s. And it just helps you to understand yourself, so you can work with and at least attempt to develop the better side of the Cancerian trait. So it is true from my experience that Cancers can be oversensitive or sensitive. I have a very strong intuition. That's very true. I've always had that. A very good imagination. I think Cancerians can... I wouldn't say I was always a homebody. I did like to travel a lot. And I think that goes with the crab, because the crab takes its home on, the shell with it. So even though a lot of astrology books say, oh, you always like to be at home, I said, not if you're comfortable in your skin.
You are at home with yourself.
With you have to become comfortable with yourself.
Yeah.
I feel the Cancerian. What else would I say is true? Well, the sense. One of the things I've noticed as I've gotten older is that sense of duty. And so doing more activism and community work. And I was talking to Brad at Mystic Journey, who's a wonderful astrologer, Brad Cronin. We had him on the show. And he was talking about, when I was getting more political, he goes, yeah, Cancers will often get involved in politics. And my mother, who is a Cancer, was very
George
political.
Bush.
Yeah, a lot of, there's definitely some Cancerian presidents. So I never really thought about that sense of duty, not just to your family, but to your community and to your country, and then some to even the whole world. So Cancer is definitely a complex, like all of them, sign, and there's, all these different layers. I also want to tell you that Cancers can be quite cold. They can get really shut down. And I've met Cancers that are, and there's plenty of murderers that are Cancerian. That could also be connected to more of the rage, the feelings.
Yeah, and they bite because of the claws.
Yeah.
And they can, that if they don't get what they want, that's what they're going to do. And there's a sense of aggressivity, which is not true. It's just because they're repressing the emotions, and they can show it, and they that's how they're going to show it to. Of course, you're not a crab, you're not going to bite. I hope so.
No, I don't think so. I'm much more mellow as I've gotten older. But so we're in a month where there's going to be a lot of that Cancerian energy, but then there's the lightness of the Gemini energy, which I also feel is very inquisitive and childlike and flirty, and I like that. And yeah, if you've ever been with someone or know someone that's got a lot of Gemini in their chart, they can really mess with your head very successfully. It's a very charming sign, I find, and they can really charm you with their ideas, even if they afterwards you go, that was really crazy, but you'll go along with it, you're like, because they're so charming and interesting, and so that they do have that kind of out there energy mentally, not unlike any of the air signs.
A lot of flower power.
A lot of flower power.
I would say. And and I was reading about Gemini yesterday, and they usually learn something, and they go through it, and when they finish, they go to something else, something new. They're really restless. They can't.
They're restless, but I will argue that's not true. It depends on what kind of Gemini you are. So, for instance, I went to a masseuse when I was in my 30s. And she was a really amazing masseuse. I would say her name, but I've totally forgotten it. And she had been a masseuse for almost 13 years. She was a Gemini, and the way she handled that restlessness, she was always learning new techniques. And she would add that to her repertoire. Okay. And she would try it on too, and sort of, hey, I'm going to do this for free for you because I want to see if this works, So, and then you have some very famous people like Yates is a Gemini. So it depends on all of your chart, because Gemini, to me, because it's the twin, can be very powerful. And I think it's how they use that restlessness, and if they have anything in their own chart that grounds it out. So I don't completely agree with that sort of like superficial idea of the Gemini, but I do find that they get bored easily. Yeah. And in relationship, I think that can happen too,
maybe
if they're not feeling stimulated, and. But I think that I've met more than one Gemini that has stayed in the same field. But I think what they do is they successfully have added new things to it. They're always innovating,
And they can have like that twin thing that they get mad, or they're really nice and loving. They one of the dark side, if I can say dark side, or the bad side when they get mad, it's not happening too often. I would say it's mostly the one that they move forward, they do things, and they try to learn new things, and that's what they really work on the positive most of the time, because they're an active sign. They're not like me, a Taurus, who thinks and thinks and thinks, and that's the big difference. And I think that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. There was one other astrological event this month I wanted to mention, which I may talk a little bit about, but probably more the next month since it's a longer cycle. Is Neptune, which is in Pisces right now, will be going retrograde on the 21st, approximately in 18 degrees of Pisces, by the way, and it is 7:36 a.m. at retrogrades, and it'll be retrograde through the rest of this year until I think it's November 28th. So we are moving into what some people would call a retrograde period, where there's more planets in retrograde more and more. And I've been reading myself a great book on retrograde planets by Aaron Sullivan. mostly because there's a lot of reaction to retrogrades that is not warranted, since almost every year, every planet except maybe Mars and Venus goes retrograde for a period of time. So it's not uncommon. And so there's just a lot of commotion sometimes, I find. So I'm trying to, study a little bit more from some of the deeper aspects of astrology, what really retrograde is. And the one thing I've taken so far from the book is a lot of the retrograde outer planets and even the inner planets, it's all connected to the sun and the ego in the chart. Because retrograde has to do with a perspective that we only see retrograde from the point of view of the Earth.
Yeah.
And so basically, depending on what planet's in retrograde and what their function is, and for instance, in your chart, it's all about helping your ego to develop and your identity to develop. And then similar to what Demeter George said, that a retrograde planet is an eccentric planet. It's erratic. It's not necessarily functioning in a predictable way, or Aaron Sullivan calls it a maverick planet. And so you don't always know what it's going to do. It's not behaving as you think it should, but that's neither good or bad. It's it's erratic. And so you have to think about, okay, what does that really mean, and not react to it. But I do eventually want to talk more about the Neptune in the United States chart, because it's almost going to be not quite opposing the natal Neptune in Virgo, which is at the top of the United States chart, which I think is one of the reasons why we have the drug epidemic. And I'm going to talk about why in probably the next show and get into it more deeply, because that needs a little more time. But it's so they're almost in opposition, not quite, the two Neptunes.
And drugs, you mean prescription drugs and regular drugs?
Opiate especially.
All of them.
The addiction,
addiction.
level, it's gotten so bad with the opiates, it's unbelievable.
And it's part of Mercury. Mercury is for addictions as well.
Oh, that's interesting, because we have Mercury and Cancer in the United States chart in the 8th house of Scorpio.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting.
That is interesting. So
that means numbing yourself not to feel what you should feel.
Oh, maybe that's part of the whole Cancerian thing too. Yeah, escaping through.
Yeah, that's what people do. They don't want to deal with their emotions, so they take things.
Well, the other thing I thought about the United States too is one reason I think we really like all of the talk shows and about the emotions, from Jerry Springer to Oprah, that we all this is one way we're trying to handle it collectively, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, but it sort of is. I thought, oh yeah, that's it. We're a very emotional country.
What's funny, it's always in an angrily fashion. It's never like quiet and talk about the emotion. It's always like there's a fight to it. Like we're talking about weapons and things about America. They should not do this, and it's the same thing. There should be like a more relaxed way of dealing with the emotions. And I wanted to say something about the retrograde thing to explain to everybody what it is. And I was reading about it yesterday, because it makes no sense. It doesn't mean retrograde, any planet is going backwards. It's not what it is. It's an illusion, because the other planets are going to go faster. So the one that's supposed to be retrograde is like still moving forward, but it looks like it's slowing down or in going backwards. Yes. So maybe the fact that it's retrograde tells you are supposed to focus on something there. Yeah. You see that maybe the planet going faster are there to tell you this is time for you to deal with a pause. Maybe pause. That's the word I was looking for. To pause and look at what's very important at the moment. And for Mercury, it's like 3 weeks, I think. It's a retrograde, and it's a long time to think about things, especially with Gemini and communication, and that's the rule of Gemini Mercury. So it's going to be in July anyway.
Yeah, July, the Mercury retrograde. Yeah, and that's the pause. And also one thing I didn't really think about, I was reading, they were saying how it's also you're going over the same ground more than once. Yeah. Because, I mean, I thought, well, that's interesting that they were saying that people forget that you're actually kind of going over the same ground for a while to give yourself time to pause and have a perspective.
Exactly. That's what it's really important. I think those things should be taken in consideration and worked on. Yeah. As I say, it's a tool for everybody. Nobody has to do it as we see, and everybody doesn't want to work on themselves, and they want to...
It is a tool, and I think it's better to use any tool consciously, whatever level of consciousness you're at, because I certainly am growing myself with all my interest in astrology since I started, and my consciousness around that will change. But I think that's a good summary of what to expect from the cosmos in June, and definitely have a really emotional, feeling, talkative, I don't know, friendly time in June if you can, at least a little bit. It's going to be natural to do that.
Yeah. Should we talk about a little bit about the full moon in Sagittarius, because that's very important. That's something as well. And what I read yesterday about this is like, since it's in Sagittarius, it's going to be like a big explosion, because Jupiter is retrograde now in Sagittarius, in its own rule sign. And so it's about fire, and a full moon in a fire sign is really, people, be careful what's coming.
It won't be there very long, though. Remember, it's going void of course. So
what does it mean
it's
exactly?
a tricky moon. Void of course means there's no aspects to the moon at that point.
It's like it disappears?
No, I mean, so the moon forms these different aspects to the planets, and when it goes void of course, traditionally most people that practice magic say that's a good time to not do magic, and some people say to kind of rest and pause because there's no, I guess, interaction with the planets, because, it's not aspecting like Saturn or Pluto. And then it goes void of course, and then it moves into the next sign. So it's switching signs too. So that's kind of interesting. It's going to Capricorn.
Yeah. Oh.
So I thought that was a kind of interesting moon to work with. I'm not sure what I would do, but yes, I think it could be quite, a quite fiery moon for sure. Sometimes just enjoying it is important. It's absolutely true. So I think that that's enough for you all to think about for this month. And don't forget to like us, subscribe to us on YouTube, comment please. If you have any questions, I will certainly try to get back to you, or one of us will. And our website is www.sixthsensesociety.com. And we hope you have a great cosmic month, and stay cosmic.
And thank you for having me.